Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It is time to start a new project. This week we've decided we are going to take on a tree skirt. So I found this pattern online. So it uses applique and embroidery together to create this tree skirt, and it actually has 45 panels. So each of these have an inner, a middle and an outer panel, and that goes around 15 of them go around, and so that makes up 45 panels altogether. So we're going to start this and see how it goes. Really excited to get this one going. We've got this one for our night sky because we wanted to stick within greys, but we didn't want to go anything too dark or detailed because you've got lots of embroidery going on top of it. So on here you'll have Santa and you'll have your reindeers, your stars, your snow, things like that. And then we went with this fabric for our background of our storefronts. So on top of this one you're going to have your pie shop, your lolly shop, train station, your church, things like that. We have pre-cut our stabilizer, all 45 pieces of it. We've pre-cut our wadding pieces as well, and then pre-cut our fabric pieces. These we had to work out from a pattern though, so we printed off to scale shape, and then we added some seam allowance to it. And the reason we did this is just to save some wastage, as you can actually cut these out of your fabric by putting one up against the other and get more out of your shapes with less fabric than the way the original pattern talks about doing it. So we've hooped up our first one of our stabilizers. We've watched a few people do pins on the sides just to help support their stabilizer from moving, or kind of like an extra safety, extra step, just to stop any movement. Some people say that it's not necessary, but we'd rather overdo it than have something shift.
First thing you do is stitch out your placement stitch. Then you make sure that your wadding is covering everywhere on that placement stitch, and then you stitch your wadding down. This pattern is great because it does a double stitch, which is really handy because the step following is actually trimming off the excess wadding. And here I am trimming off the excess wadding, trying to get as close as I can to that stitch line without actually cutting that stitch. The next step from there is to stitch down your background fabric. Again, it does a double stitch for this, and we want to make sure that we have an even amount of seam allowance on each side. And then the fun part, choosing colours for the embroidery. So this square that we're doing here has some different presents embroidered onto it. So we got to choose quite a few different colours for both the presents and the bow. And then it embroiders some stars, which we've gone for silver, and some snow.
There we go. There's that one, our first one all finished. Looks really cool, and I'm excited to get on with the rest of them. So there's a detail shot of it as well.
And this is us doing the panel that has the Santa and a sleigh on. In this panel we have used some gold thread. We had a few troubles with this gold thread, but we found once we slowed our machine right down, we seem to have had a little less trouble. And since then we've also been informed that you really do need to change to a metallic needle when you're doing these gold and silver metallic threads, as they have a larger eye, and this stops the heat of the needle melting the metallic thread.
This block is a church building, so the first thing we kind of done is just got some fabrics and some threads in the colours that we want to use, so that we have an idea on which direction we're going. With a lot of the blocks, what we're doing is we're starting off with a beginning fabric, particular one that relates to the image that's going on. So this block in particular, we chose the music notes for the church because of the fact that that represents the worship. And like in our pet shop one, we had this fabric here which has got bones on it, and the paw prints fabric in here. So that's kind of how we're starting off our designs, and then we're working the other fabrics just around that looks kind of cool with it. And again, another example is our ice cream parlour. We wanted to have a strawberry and cream ice cream shop. So we started off with the pink fabric being our starting point, because in our household we have some absolute strawberry obsessed young ladies, and so it just ties in with our family, and kind of where we've just started with each block is what fabric is the first fabric that speaks to us, that talks about the block or about, you know, what we like in our household, and went from there. So these are the first squares that we've done with the applique and embroidery. Basically, with choosing the fabric and the appliques, there's no wrong way of doing it. Go with fabrics you like, go with colours you like. We've done some textures, so here we've got we have a fabric that's got a pile, so it's quite nice and soft. But we've also added in some glitter fabrics in ours, so this one's got some glitter here and a little bit of tulle. So we've got tulle on the elf's little shop front here, as well as a little bit of tulle in our cloud, so that they give it a little bit of a shimmer on certain angles. Then with our embroidery threads, we've been using an arrangement with them as well. So we have our metallics that we've got here. We have a variegated on this side, which we're still trying to work out how the variegators do and don't work in them, but it kind of looks fun because it just looks like a homemade knitted hat. And then we're using a lot of solids as well, but again, the colours, it's just up to you. We're generally pulling colours that we've used in other panels. We're trying to repeat certain colours by giving continuity, but then we've grabbed, like, I don't think we've used this orange before, but you know, there's 15 panels of these sort of shop fronts and village pictures to do, so we will use this orange in another one to bring it all back and tie it together.
So here you can see that the shop panels start the same way, by putting your placement stitch down, adding your wadding on top and stitching that in, followed by trimming off your excess wadding, and then it will be topped with your background fabric.
Okay, so we have cut out our wadding, so around the stay stitching. One thing we have done this week is we've invested in a couple of pairs of scissors. This pair is a duckbill. It helps you get nice and close to the stitches when you are cutting away your piece that's being appliqued on. But we have noticed that it's not as easy to get into the tight spots. So by watching a few other people's applique videos, we've seen that they've used these ones. And although these are labelled as embroidery scissors, we have seen a lot of people using them for their applique because they can get nice and close in the tight areas. So yeah, so those are the two that we've invested in and have been told that they will help us so much more and make our life easier. And if you want to be doing applique embroideries, that you definitely want to have some scissors like these. Alright, so we are now going to place our fabric down. We have cut our fabric bigger than the wadding by 3/4 of an inch on each side. This way I've got a little bit I can trim off to make sure it's square at the end, but also I've got my seam allowance as well. So we're hand winding the first step and bringing the bobbin through to the top, and this is just to help reduce the what you call bird nesting underneath. So now we're just setting up the machine for our first top layer of applique. So that is our placement stitch for our first applique, which is the church building.
Okay, sometimes when you've got fabric that's got a directional, like this here does because it's music, Just be mindful that you're lying your fabric in the right direction.
And double checking that it's completely covered.
Yeah.
Now that that fabric is tacked down in place, we're going to take the hoop off the machine and trim off the excess fabric. Okay, so you can see the stay stitching in here. We were pretty close here. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, but we did manage to get it in. Now we're doing the placement stitch for the roof, as it's going to be another colour. Alright, so that's our placement stitches for the roof pieces. So we've done our placement stitch in the same colour that we planned to do the satin stitch, just that way we can get an idea of how it looks. And then we've used 3 little pieces on this one.
Oh, that's there. No, it's there.
Okay. The risky thing with using little pieces is if it's going to catch it. Yeah, it's caught it. So we're just looking at the placement of how the fabrics work, because we've decided to use 3 little pieces because we want to try and get the next fabric to kind of look a bit like tile slates and stuff. So we're just going to see if we're happy with it. At this point, if you're not happy with any of the fabric placements, obviously now you want to unpick them. So a couple of the pieces were a bit close on that one, but we have caught them. So we're going to continue by cutting that next bit out. You do get a bit of, this is what we call bird's nesting in here, and that is because you're not being able to bring that thread through to the top. It is part of what you kind of get with a bit of applique. Every time we're taking it off the machine, we are clipping the extra threads so that they don't get caught up in the design and be pulled through to the front.
So we're now repeating this process to add the trees onto this panel.
That bit's done, so now we will cut out the trees and we'll show you where it is at that point. So that is the applique done for this panel. The next thing we're going to do is start the embroidery. Today we found that we found out how to turn our automatic trimmer off, and we found by doing that we're not getting knots from the top thread on the back, because our machine does a lovely job at sucking the thread through to the back, but when you do that you end up with knots on the back. So it is a personal preference. This way we have to stop the machine and trim the top thread, where the other way you don't, but this way we also have a cleaner back to our embroidery. This is the church panel finished with all of its embroidery. We changed some of the colours up during the stitch out. So the colour red here was also meant to stitch out the brown here, but all we did is when we did the jump stitch from the rooftop here over to the window, we paused the machine, cut it, changed the thread to the colour that we wanted. And then we did the opposite within the cross inside the window, because it went from the cross being gold to changing colour to the little diamonds on the outside, but we wanted it to stay gold, so we just pressed go again. So these are really small, easy changes that you can do on your machine without having to know how to digitize anything.
For project 37, I will show you all the panels made, and then for project 38, we will show you how we put them all together to create a tree skirt.